Welcome to Citizens Reunited to Overcome Cancer, a show to make your survivorship an easier journey by providing information and advocating for you. A show to help practitioners and their level of performance. This is the CROC Podcast. Here is your host, Dr. E. And alongside him to share some hope and inspiration from the Have Faith, Let It Begin podcast, co-host Angel Santana.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the CROC Podcast, Citizens Reunited to Overcome Cancer. This is the Cancer Survivorship Podcast. We don't just talk about cancer. We talk about people. We talk about the experience of cancer. We talk about the human side of cancer. We tell stories. Our patients tell stories. Our practitioners tell stories. These are stories of inspiration. These are stories of hope. These are stories of courage. I am your host, Dr. Eanelli. Joining me, as always, Angel Santana. Angel, welcome to a very special podcast.
I'll tell you, Mother Nature may not be letting go of our weather here, but you know what is in control is the amazing forecast of an amazing reoccurring guest that we have on our show, and I'll let you take the reins. I'm so excited today.
You should never, as a podcast host, ever say that anyone is your favorite guest, but there is no question in my mind that Talaya Dendy, our favorite cancer doula, our favorite podcaster and survivor advocate, is one of my favorite people on earth, and having her back is just such a pleasure. Talaya, welcome, my dear friend.
Oh, thank you, Dr. E and Angel. So good to be back here with you again and see your lovely faces. And I'm excited to talk with you.
I have to tell you, it's such a, there are no coincidences in life. And as I was saying to Angel and Talaya before taping, a few months ago, as the holidays were coming, I tried to connect with Talaya to make sure everything was going well. And she will give us an update about her life and her work. But I was noticing that she had posted something about her graduation. So this is getting on a few months graduation time. And she was telling about the experience of graduating from a cancer survivor, going to her oncologist and transitioning to her primary care. And I thought, I've been trying to do this graduation podcast forever because, Angel, there's always a story, right? We always tell the story. And we end this podcast always the same with the CROC blessing. And that's when I say we wish all of our cancer survivors a long, healthy, happy, and cancer-free life. And how did that come about? Well, that came about, that statement, that blessing was something I developed over the years when I would see a cancer survivor for the last time and then wish them well and give them my hug and give them my blessing as they go out into the world cancer-free and as a regular, ordinary person, no longer needing a specialist or an oncologist to follow them anymore. And I thought, what better person to work with us to actually get the real deep meaning of this separation between the oncologist and the survivor, because it is happy. I want to tell everybody this is a happy podcast, but it's not, but it's much more complicated than it sounds. It's not just a celebration where Talaya will throw her hat up in the air and graduate and be all sorts of smiles and giggles. It's also a very scary time and a very anxious, anxiety-provoking time. So I want to start, if I might, just to sort of define that relationship that makes us so special, that makes this relationship between the survivor and the oncologist such a special one. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. So when a person walks into an oncologist's office for that first time, let's say, I think we could say with some confidence, that is the worst day of their life, or at least one of the worst days of their life. And just to frame it for everyone else who's not a cancer survivor, and this is, of course, barring any circumstances where any of our listeners might have had a very terrible and traumatic, situation happen in their life. So, of course, you're excused from this. But just to frame it, what's a bad day, Angel? A bad day is when basically you might get an offender bender. And oh my God, I remember last summer I hit a deer or a deer hit me and my car was out of commission for the entire summer. Like that was a bad day, right? You might come home and your wife or your partner might say, by the way, the water boiler is broken. You have to, come up with $1,400 and put in a new water boiler, a new water heater. That's kind of a bad day. Or if like you have this big family reunion or you have a holiday and you have 30 of your family members and you burn the turkey, that's kind of a bad day. But let's put it in perspective. Is it really that bad of a day? You've just been told you have cancer and now you're walking into an office to meet a stranger that you have to trust your life. You're putting your life in their hands. And that's the beginning of this relationship. It is literally walking in on the worst day of your life and meeting someone, you're beginning this relationship. And that's the moment when something extraordinary happens. Over the weeks, over the months, over the years, we together, the oncologist and the survivor, we begin this journey, this very special journey. Together, we review the data. We review your pathology. We review your films. We review your staging, your prognosis. We then together have to make these life-altering treatment decisions. And then we have to sit together through these treatments. And when they're over, we celebrate your victories and we have to absorb your defeats and we have to share your fear and we have to share your hope and we have to share our tears together. And it's not a routine medical relationship because it's so much deeper than that. We, as the oncology team, we become part doctor, part guide, part translator, and part emotional anchor. And that's what we are to you. To us, as the survivor, you are more than just a chart. You're more than just a diagram. You're more than just a diagnosis. You become a person whose story we get to know. We get to meet your family. We get to meet your children. We get to hear about your dreams, your aspirations. We get to know what you were before you got sick. We get to know who you are as individuals, as people, what your essence is. We talk about this all the time on this podcast. What is the essence of your patient? And slowly this bond begins to develop between us and we begin this dance. And there's a rhythm to this dance. And the rhythm to this dance at first is very fast and quick and frenetic. And that's when we meet you and we get the diagnosis and we start your treatments. And this is where you suffer through these treatments and we try to ease your suffering. This is the time when we need to basically put you on our backs and reassure you and deal with your fear. And then the dance starts to slowly change. That beat, that rhythm changes and it slows down. Your side effects are starting to resolve and subside. You get your first set of scans, you get your first set of blood work, your examination, your scope, and then that becomes your second set, and then your third set, and then finally it's time for that dance to end. There's no more scans, no more blood work, no more exams needed, no more scopes. And you become no longer that person who has cancer. You now become that person who had cancer. And your life starts to get back to normal. And eventually, it's time for us to say some version of what I say. Talaya, I wish you a long, healthy, happy, cancer-free life. And Talaya, I'd like you to take it from here and tell all of us the experience from your perspective, from the perspective of the survivor.
Well, thank you, Dr. E. Again, so happy to be here with you and Angel. I actually saw my oncologist for 14 years. So April 8th of this year will be 15 years post-treatment for me. And although I didn't need scans or anything like that for many years, I was still seeing my oncologist and seeing him once a year just to kind of come in, do some blood work to make sure all the blood cells, white blood cells look good, everything looks good, no signs of major inflammation, those kind of things. But no longer needed any scans or anything like that, unless there were some major concerns that I had. So this past June of 2025, I went in and saw my oncologist for my annual, check-in. And he did all the things, went over my blood work and, hey, how you doing? And any concerns, that kind of thing. So the typical check-in. Towards the end, he said, Talaya, you have graduated from the program. And I knew what he meant. And honestly, I knew I had graduated but many years ago, but it just was that reassurance that once a year I had somewhere to go, who they knew my history for the past 14 years. They knew me as a person. They knew the things that I enjoyed doing in terms of work and my personal life. And so I looked forward to that appointment every year with the hopes that, I'm going to see someone who has walked by my side for 14 years, but I don't have any major concerns. But I know he's there if I do. And so just having those annual appointments felt like a safety net. And I say that because, again, thankfully, I haven't had any issues with cancer since my diagnosis in 2011, and no reason to think that cancer has returned. So, but those appointments, again, were a peace of mind, really, really, to be totally honest, a peace of mind for me. And as I was saying, this past June, end of appointment, he says, Talaya, you've graduated. Again, I knew what he meant. And I just kind of sat there and I just looked at him and he said, there really isn't a need for you to continue to come back, but I'll leave it up to you if that's something that you want to do. So the ball's in your court. And I didn't make a decision right away that day because I was just sitting with the fact of, wow, it's time to make a decision. And it really put a lot of things into perspective for me about, maybe other people need his time more than me. There are people who need his time who are once where I was when I was first diagnosed and I didn't have a clue. And I was so afraid and felt so lost and, wondering how much longer I was going to live, like all these things. And he was instrumental in guiding me through a lot of those things. And so, again, I didn't make a decision that day. I didn't make a decision a week later. I made a decision a couple months later. And he said, just let me know. The ball's in your court. If you still want to come, you can. And so I thought about it, gave it a few months, talked to my family, prayed about it, really thought about how far I had come and realized that I feel very confident in the skills that I have in terms of advocacy, being able to get resources, being able to do research, but then also all the things that I've learned on my own, but then also supporting other people going through cancer. So that was one thing. I said, I feel very confident that I could handle this if something were to reoccur or a different kind of cancer were to come back. And one thing he said to me, he said, Talaya, I have no doubt that you would find your way back. You're very resourceful if something were to happen. And so that let me know that he had confidence in me. And so finally, a couple months later, again, after talking with my family, weighing the pros and cons, and really doing soul searching about what was I really afraid of? what was I really afraid of? And at the core, it's recurrence. That's what I was afraid of. And I thought about it and I said, well, I know how to reach him. He's there. I can call his office. I can get in touch with a nurse. He's there. And so again, it really fell back on how confident I was in my own skill set, but then also um, knowing that he was there if I needed him. Those two things really helped me. But then the third thing was, again, really just thinking about how I felt when I first met him and how the time that I spend with him once a year could go to someone who needs him way more than me. And so those three things together, I said, I'll be fine. I'm going to officially graduate. And so, I let him and his office know that I'll rely more on my primary care doctor, which I had really been doing anyway. And I had made sure that anything that needed to be communicated to my oncologist was being communicated via the portal, the electronic health record portal. So they were able to see different tests and things like that. So there was kind of that coordination going on behind the scenes. Even when it really wasn't needed, it was making sure that he was aware of what my blood work and things like that looked like throughout the year. So having that in place was another factor. It was scary because, again, it was someone who I've known for all these years. It was someone who has seen me at my lowest and who was with me when I could have died, because we never know how these things are going to go. I hadn't really believed that I wasn't going to die, but there's this small chance. You just don't know how it's going to go. We know statistics, and of course, oncologists, they recommend what's statistically sound for that particular case. And, those numbers look really good for me, but there's always that small sliver of it may not go that way. And so that was in the back of my mind. And just having someone who took the time to walk through that with me was very important. The other thing that made it easier for me to come to this decision was I was provided with a survivorship care plan. And so when I completed my treatment in 2011, I was given this survivorship care plan, and I always recommend for anyone that I work with or anyone that I come across, and I know that they're in active treatment, I encourage them to get a survivorship care plan before their treatment ends. So if they have any questions, if they feel like there's something that needs to be added to that, they can have that conversation with their oncologist before they're done with treatment and they start to see their oncologist less and less. For those who are not aware, a survivorship care plan, at least mine anyway, captured the type of cancer, the staging, the kind of treatment, how long I had treatment, and then also long-term side effects to look out for over the years. So, for example, for me, because of where I had radiation, breast cancer could be something, to look out for down the road. So I religiously have my mammograms every year on time. So just kind of knowing, when people get chemotherapy, you could develop heart issues down the road. So there's a lot of different things. And that should be in one survivorship care plan. So that kind of gives them different things to keep an eye on. Also, one thing that was shared was like, I would say particular tests or scans that I would need like the first 2 to 3 years after I completed treatment. So, for me, I needed to make sure I had a CT scan at least once a year for the next couple of years, just to make sure nothing was hiding, that kind of thing. And then eventually that phased out. So this plan captures should capture all of those things. And then for me, also physical activity, things to keep in mind in terms of nutrition. And it has been so important, this plan, because when I've gone to different primary care doctors, I've had to switch doctors a couple times. I can give them a copy of this and say, hey, here's a very important health history. So we need to make sure that you understand what I've been through so that we know what to keep an eye on going forward. And that's also a great way to prevent being dismissed, having your concerns dismissed. Hey, I went through cancer treatment and I'm very concerned about, this particular thing. Here's why I think it's important. And so they have all of that information. It's a great advocacy tool. And unfortunately, Dr. E, a lot of people have never received a survivorship care plan. They don't know what it is. And so I encourage people to take matters into your own hands. They can go to the ASCO website, and that's asco.org, I believe. And they have survivorship care plan templates. They can download those templates and take that template with them to their oncologist and say, hey, I would like to start working on my survivorship care plan. And that way, when their treatment ends, they're not just left like, okay, now what do I do? This plan should kind of lay out things to look for, additional scans and when you would need them, lifestyle factors, all those things which are so important when you finish treatment and on into post-treatment survivorship, to help prevent recurrence. We can't control everything, but having that information and knowing what to quote unquote expect, so to speak, can help. It can also help with anxiety and a lot of the fear. It helped me to feel more confident. And again, we're talking about what happens when you leave your oncologist or you graduate. You are relying primarily on your primary care doctor. So you want to make it as easy as possible for them to be able to give you the care that you need. So in order to do that, they need to be aware of what you've already been through. And I think that's a piece that a lot of people miss, is that communication. And I encourage people, don't rely on them to talk to each other. Sometimes we have to be the mediator. And if you feel like you can't do that with your voice, you can do that with your survivorship care plan. And again, whenever I switch, doctors or go to a new primary care, that is in my file. And I say, hey, I'm giving you a copy. Please scan this in. And so that's one thing that I really want people to know about. I've talked to different oncologists and I've asked, why isn't this standard? And some say, it's hard to get people to adhere to it. They don't have the time. There's so many different factors. But I just want to encourage anyone out there listening that if this is something that you want for yourself, you don't have to wait for your oncologist to do this for you. Again, you can go to asco.org, and they're a credible cancer organization. They do all kinds of research, everything. And they have a treatment care plan if you're in treatment, and they also have a survivorship care plan. And again, print that survivorship care plan off and take it to your oncologist before treatment ends, because that allows you to have those conversations to get more clarity and things like that before you officially graduate.
So beautifully said, Talaya, as always. And not only did you answer the part about the emotionality of uncoupling from your oncologist, but also you so beautifully and articulately went through the transition period of how our survivors need to transition from their oncologist to their primary care physician. So you did my job on that part, so I don't have to go there. But I would like to sort of kind of end with the perspective from the oncologist. And Talaya, as a cancer doula, you have both jobs, right? So you have one hat of being the survivor and the other hat of being the doula. So you know that it's also emotional for the practitioner as well as it is for the survivor. And it's because we remember your journey because we were part of your journey. We were there when basically the birthing, of your survivorship occurred. And we do remember that first visit and we do remember those tough days. We remember all the uncertainty. And when we look across the desk or the exam table and we see you, our survivor looking so healthy, it's almost like watching, I think I wouldn't be going too crazy to say almost like watching our children, become adults. And there's a certain amount of pride that we feel. We're happy that you're happy. And we know that the ending is meaningful. And what people don't realize is that there's a quiet privilege, right? So there's this privilege that we have as your practitioners of our dear beloved survivors to we're allowed a peek inside of your life, all of your private things, all of your privacies, all of your deepest thoughts and aspirations. You let us in during the most vulnerable time of your life, and that bonds us. And when that chapter closes, the closing of the oncology slash survivor relationship, it reminds me of why we started doing this anyway, why we became oncologists. And it's not just to treat your cancer, but to walk you through it. And Angel, I want to let you know that I'm going to let you kind of close up with your spiritual review. But what really, to end it well, there's a shift. There's a shift from a patient who has cancer to a patient that had cancer. And it's a shift to normalcy. So now what the focus should be is going to your primary care doctor like everyone else on earth does without needing that specialist and concentrating on what Talaya was mentioning, on your ordinary life, on your blood pressure, on your cholesterol, on your exercise, on your sleep, and just getting back to the ordinary because, quite frankly, in ordinary life after cancer is really something extraordinary. Angel, please give us a perspective.
Well, first and foremost, Talaya, what an incredible milestone. I mean, 14
Thank
years
you.
since your diagnosis, right? And now graduating from oncology care. I'm sitting here and I'm saying, wow, what a testimony of strength, resilience, and hope. I mean, your journey hasn't just been about surviving. It's about transforming lives, including ours here on this show. And what's even more powerful is this: your story doesn't end here. It continues. It's going to continue to inspire, to uplift, and to give hope to so many people who are still in that fight because of you. Others will believe they can make it too. So I say we celebrate you today, not just for how far you have come, but for the countless lives that you are going to continue to impact just from what you're sharing with us today. God bless you.
Thank you,
Angel, thank
Angel.
you for wrapping that up. Talaya, again, delighted to have you and can't wait to have you back again. And just wanted to let everyone know just a little. I told her I wouldn't embarrass her, but I am going to embarrass her a little bit. So Talaya can be reached through her organization on the other side. Angel will post, so you know how to get in touch with her. She is a certified cancer doula. She's currently in the middle, pretty much right in the middle of her Bush Fellowship, which is a very, very, very prestigious thing where she's expanding her professional self and her her inner self, to again help our cancer survivors. And we'll post a little something about that as well. But Talaya, so delighted to have you here, and you are welcome here anytime.
Thank you, Dr. E. It's always a pleasure to join you and Angel, and I love everything that you're doing. Thank you.
My pleasure. So, Angel, in conclusion, to close, we all know cancer changes people, but really, survivorship changes people as well. And sometimes that final oncology visit is not just the end of your treatment, it's the beginning of a new identity. Not an identity as a patient, but an identity of someone who's been through something incredibly difficult and came out the other side. So everyone out there, please, if you found today's episode meaningful, if you found Talaya's words impactful, please share it with someone who has been through cancer or someone who cares for cancer survivors. Because the story of cancer does not end when treatment ends. Rather, it ends when the next chapter starts, which is the beginning of your life. And Angel, this is probably the most meaningful ending blessing, because now everyone knows where this blessing came from. So on behalf of myself, of the CROC organization, Angel Santana, and the entire board of directors, and of course, most importantly, on behalf of Talaya Dendy, let me just wish you all the CROC blessing. We wish you a long, healthy, happy, cancer-free life. God bless you. God be with you. Peace.
Hey, CROC Nation, if today's message inspired you, please subscribe, download, and share this episode with your friends or someone who you believe needs it. Visit us at crocvip.com to connect, learn, and join the fight. Let's spread hope, one story at a time. Until next time, remember, we are not just a podcast, we are a movement.